Welcome to episode 6 of Objectively Biased. Today we are talking about the 2025 draft a little bit. How firm is Cooper Flagg stance at number 1 overall this year? Could Dylan Harper creep in a little bit? How close is San Antonio to taking a massive leap? And Franz Wagner's leap to stardom. What's going on, everybody? This is Wilder Adams alongside John Tortorelli and River Brown. How's everybody doing?
Fantastic. Woke up on the right side of the bed this morning and was only made 10 times better at the Steelers W. So I'm really excited for this episode, man.
No sleeping through alarms today?
No, neither of us.
Okay.
My boys in a dog fight with Baltimore right now, but I'm feeling good. Feeling good. Had a nice little Thanksgiving. Some good hoops today. Watching Memphis get a W. I was excited about that. Cavs are on. You got Houston on a little bit later. It's a good day of sports, and I'm excited to talk Objectively Biased.
Absolutely. I remember I was watching that Memphis game, and Indiana's defense, guys, oh my gosh, it is brutal right now.
Yeah.
In terms of the transition defense, some of the worst in the league right now. I couldn't stand watching Indiana the past couple weeks, and especially today. So that was bad. But I got a funny story to tell you guys. So over Thanksgiving, you guys know, do you guys have like senior dancers like for the Knicks or Nets in New York? You know what I'm talking about?
Good question.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
So funny. So the Timberwolves are apparently one of the only 4 teams to have like a senior dancing team. And my mom tried out, and there were 2 open spots, and there were 100 people who tried out, and my mom made the team.
That's awesome.
Really?
Yeah.
That is pretty far.
We knew this in September, and we kept it a secret from my dad for basically 3 months. And
Why?
Because it's hilarious. We went to the game yesterday, and it was her debut. Or was it? No, Friday. No, what day was it? Yeah, it was yesterday. It was yesterday from the moment we're recording this. But we found a way to keep the secret, and we recorded my dad's reaction to see my mom out of the blue dancing on the floor. And it was the funniest thing ever. So it was good, man. The Timberwolves finally got a dub that day as well. So, I think my mom is responsible for that, frankly. So
It's pretty awesome. Special family moment, big W. I mean, I think that's what sports is all about at the end of the day. So.
Oh, absolutely, man. My mom, she had like a bad calf all week. So, senior dancers, so you never know if they're going to be, healthy game to game. And she was healthy that game. So we're feeling, but that freaked her out because we were planning this for we've been talking about keeping this a secret since the moment she tried out, and it was pretty funny. So, I think that's a good way to transition to the 2025 NBA draft, even though they have no relevance to each other. And I think the best way to start out is, John, you want to get the screen up and we can get a randomized order?
Let me go do that right now in Fanspo. They have the update.
Go, Johnny.
The first overall pick, that will be decided by one of you guys want to take it. Random order. What do you want to do?
I don't care.
I say we go oldest to youngest, so me.
Okay,
so I got number 2.
Yeah, because John is little bro.
John, how old are you?
I'm 21. So
okay, I'm 21 too. When was your birthday?
Never mind.
Riv is an unk, man.
Yeah, there we go. Big unk.
There you go.
John, you never answered this question. You never answered this question.
I said I was born in June.
Oh,
okay, June. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, so I was born February. So, all right, I got picked 2 then in that case.
All right.
I think we could start the number 1 pick. I feel like with the conversation. I think the easy answer for me would go to Cooper Flagg, but there's been some grumblings. There's been some, elite performances from Dylan Harper that's maybe pushing him for the number 1 spot. And I guess, we see Washington being really bad. We expect Utah to be really bad. Philly, we expect to get a little bit better, but they're hovering around the bad right now. Number 1 pick, Dylan Harper, Cooper Flagg. Maybe you want to toss in the Ace Bailey or Igor. Talk to me, fellas. What's your idea on it?
First off, who has number 1? John, can you load that up?
Oh, my fault. I thought you meant like which one I was picking. The Washington Wizards with a 2-14 record.
Okay.
Wow.
You know what's funny? I think to answer this question to start out, if I was the Wizards and I had the number 1 overall pick, I would take Dylan Harper first.
Really?
I would.
Why?
Because I think the Wizards more badly need a go-to heliocentric creator more so than they need Cooper Flagg's archetype, because theoretically a lot of that's going to be contributed with Bilal Koulibaly and Alex Sarr. They're not Cooper Flagg, but I think Dylan Harper, from what I've seen so far this year, and I'm not trying to be a hot take artist, I truly believe Dylan Harper's the number one pick right now. And it's kind of in that Paolo Banchero versus Chet Holmgren sense, where if you're a team like the Magic and you have the number one overall pick and you more badly need an offensive engine more so than a defensive engine, you might lean to Paolo. Whereas if you want a great complementary offensive player who's also a defensive and cultural anchor, you might go Cooper Flagg. And I think at this point, I think the Wizards need a guy who we can just say he can create his own shot consistently. And Dylan Harper can do that. I think he's the best in the draft at that. So it's your pick, Riv. It's your pick. It's your pick. I'm not making the pick for you, but I think Dylan Harper right now leans number one. And if I was a Wizards, I'll take him.
So if you were Utah, which way would you go? I feel like that's another situation where Dylan could go one.
Right.
Yeah.
We don't have an established point guard. I like Keontae George, and I would love to see Will Hardy get to coach a guy like Flagg, but you wonder what Dylan Harper could do in that system. If I were the Jazz, I would take Cooper Flagg still, though.
Okay. Well, obviously, as the big unk, I have the number one pick in the draft. I'm looking at all phases, man. I'm looking at the roster they have right now, who I think is going to be on the roster for the next upcoming year. I really hate Kyle Kuzma. I don't think he's good at basketball, but I do like I do like their young talent. I like Bub. I like George. I like Bilal. I think Sarr defensively is fine. I think offensively he has ways to go. But he needs a guard. I think he needs more than anything. He needs a guard. And I think Jordan Poole, he's been playing really well this year in the scoring department. He's even upped his playmaking to a degree. Defensively, he's never going to be this wow defender, but the effort is always what matters. And I think he's shown that this year. I think here I go Cooper Flagg, though. And I love Dylan Harper as a prospect. I really, really do. I just think you need a veteran point guard to kind of unlock these guys. And I think you can find that in free agency. But more than anything, why not shore up the defensive front court by having Bilal, Cooper Flagg, and Sarr? I mean, that front court right there, it's a little bit skinny. Don't get me wrong. They do have to size out, of course, but they're all really young. I think Cooper Flagg as a connector is there. I think his playmaking is on full display, his versatility on defense. Offensively, he's not the same player Dylan Harper is. I won't say he is, but I think his jumper looks good. It has a nice little look to it, so he can work on that. The handles are solid. And I think him as a player can really elevate this Washington Wizards team. I think we're looking at Dylan Harper as a heliocentric offensive hub. I think Cooper Flagg can be an offensive and defensive playmaker for this franchise. So I'll go Cooper Flagg with one. I
agree with the pick.
I can't hate on that. I'll respectfully disagree with the pick, but it's acknowledging both are in the same tier for me. I think Flagg and Harper are both number one overall caliber picks. And I think what's really separated it from me is coming into the season, I was like, what's Dylan Harper's superpower? What does he do at an elite level? And watching that Notre Dame game and just how easily, I understand Notre Dame isn't a great team, but the burst, the bend, the flexibility around the rim is so much better than I thought it was coming into the season. And he has the defense. He has the perimeter shot making. Even though the efficiency isn't there yet, I think it will. The playmaking, I mean, dude, I think he's Cade Cunningham with more athleticism, rim pressure. I think that's the type of pick we're talking about. And I think if you're a team who needs a shot creator, and look, man, heliocentric two-way players, I mean, those do pretty well in the NBA. So I think he's in a rare archetype, and he's the son of Ron Harper. So
yeah, I think the game against Alabama, man, that one right there, like you're talking about a top 10 team in the country, arguably one of the best teams in the country, and he just walked them down. I think I can see I see Cade, I see Brunson, like I see a mixture of both of them in Dylan Harper's game. And I'm just interested to see how he is, because he fits that size, 6'5", 6'6". He's about 200 pounds. He's strong.
220. He's 220. Oh my goodness. He's way more than 200.
Strong, physical. His rim touch is there. He can get to the rim. He can get into the paint. So I agree with you, Walt. I think both of them are the number one pick. Like, that's how good both of them are. It's really going to be, in my opinion, team dependent. I think people have kind of made their mind up about Flagg going one. I disagree though. I think Harper is making a strong case for him going one. And I think if a team needs a guard, especially a team like Utah who has Laurie and stuff like that, why not swing for the fences and be like, no, I want to take Dillon. I mean, KG, he hasn't been efficient and he's been on and off, very inconsistent. And Colin Sexton's a good player, but I don't think he's the point guard of the future.
Right. I think we've seen these last 7 to 10 games of these two opening the season that the number 1 overall pick is not a closed case for this year. I think very easily Dylan Harper has put himself in that same exact discussion as Cooper, who leading up to this season, we mostly looked at, I think a lot of people, as a generational prospect with how versatile a defensive player he is and how impactful he can be offensively. And I think one thing that gets lost in this discussion is that Cooper Flagg's still 17 years old and he's putting up 16 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists, and 3 stocks at that age. The efficiency may not quite be there yet, and we've seen some high turnover moments in these gotta-have-it situations, but he's still a child going up against grown men, and college players who are more developed. And I think that's something that we do have to consider in this because Dylan Harper is more physically ready and mature. And I want to have this conversation now before we move on to the 2nd and 3rd overall pick because Dylan Harper to me is Jalen Brunson and Cade Cunningham's body. When Cade was coming out the draft, he was mocked to be this do-it-all 6'7" point guard, which he was. So on that led his conference in scoring and shot 40% from 3, but was still an elite passer at his position. But with Dylan Harper, every time I watch him play, I go, this is if Jalen Brunson was 5 inches taller. At that size, 6'6", 220 pounds, he is a complete scorer, someone who plays with the pace and the patience of Cade, but the physicality and poise of Brunson once he breaks the paint. He's shooting nearly 60% on twos, which is absurd for a guard, and that really highlights he's a wing in a guard's body. And I think that's where you can draw a comparison of a Shea, where he's uber efficient inside the paint and inside the arc. And the 3-point shot, yeah, it's only going at a 26% clip, but when you watch him shoot, you see the confidence and you see the touch. And anytime you tune into a Rutgers game, you're noticing at 18 years old, this kid gets to the foul line with ease. 7.5 attempts is absurd for an 18-year-old. And that's something that in the NBA, I think, gives him the potential to be an elite scorer. And when we look at these elite scoring prospects like Jalen Green, let's say, Dylan Harper is a clear tier above that to me because physically he sets himself apart. And then he has that mindset of defending and playing the game the right way. He's a good passer and he's not just a one-dimensional shot creator. This is someone who does everything on the floor. And at that size, I think we're talking about a player with star written all over him. And realistically, I wouldn't be surprised if in 5 years we're talking about a top 10 player in the making. That's the type of potential he has. But for me, I still think Cooper Flagg, until we're proven otherwise, until we have the full season, should be the one who's slightly favored above him because of his upside long term.
I don't have an issue with that. I think all those points are true. But I think if we just took away the thoughts of what we had going to the season and said, look, one guy is a 6'6", 225-pound guard who shoots 78% at the rim, shoots 8 free throw attempts a game, is a positive defender, positive playmaker, can hit tough shots, is the son of a key role player on an NBA dynasty. All of us would say, oh my gosh, take this guy number 1 in any draft besides Victor or LeBron. Like, that's the type of stuff he's doing right now. And I get the let's wait for the full season to play out. But for me, there's no doubt who's been the more impressive prospect. Cooper Flagg is awesome, and he's a tier 1 type prospect, and he has all those things. I've watching key moments, I still think Flagg incredibly young. He's 17. It's unbelievable how good he is. Dylan Harper's still 18. He's still a young guy. And I think right now, I just see a clear gap on who would I prefer with the ball in their hands in clutch time. And I think if you're number 1 overall, I want the guy I'm most comfortable with getting those shots late. And, I go back to the Paolo versus Chet debate. And Paolo was that offensive hub. And Chet was that defensive anchor who could do a lot of things offensively. I think Cooper Flagg has a lot of similarities to a prospect like Chet Holmgren, a better prospect than Chet, but similar. And Paolo went number 1. And look, I think if we did that draft again, injuries are a big reason why Chet isn't the clear number 1 pick in that draft. But I think Orlando made the right pick. And Dylan Harper, unlike Apollo's, coming into the NBA most likely as a plus defender. And I think this is a can't miss prospect in the lights of, like I said, I would take a number 1. If he keeps playing like this in the K draft, in the Paolo draft, obviously in the Versace draft, in the Edwards draft, even maybe Zion draft, like if he continues this is the type of prospect that I want to build around. And I'm just beyond impressed.
This is kind of what Cade was doing at Oklahoma State. We're seeing Dylan Harper do the same thing at Rutgers. You go to I don't want to say a low school, a school in a top conference. You go there and you kind of just show everybody, nah, this is my show. I run it, and I'm one of them dudes. I think the sad part about this conversation is these are both two can't miss prospects, and you're gonna miss on one of them at the number 1 pick, and that's what sucks. You're kind of always, if you're on the Dylan side, you're gonna be like, damn, bro, I think this is the can't miss prospect. If you're on the Cooper Flagg side, you're like, no, bro, this is the can't miss prospect. Yeah. You're really missing out on one guy. You can't have both. Maybe San Antonio is one of the few teams that can get both if luck favors their way, but for the most part, you really can't get both. And I think, it's really going to be a crime because they're going to be going back and forth all year. I do think Dylan has showed a little bit more in the tank offensively down the stretch. I know Cooper Flagg has had some moments where he's, fizzled up late. But God, Duke really runs everything through him, not just on offense, but on defense too. He's really the guy for them. So I want to give him some grace in that remark. But I think both of you guys are sound. I think both of these guys can't miss, and you're fucked, honestly, because if you pick Flagg and Harper becomes a guy, you're like, damn. If you pick Harper and Flagg becomes a guy, you're like, damn. So I think both of them you can't miss with either one, in my opinion.
And I don't know if this is a hot take, but if you look at the last 10 NBA drafts, Dylan Harper goes first overall in 6 to 7 out of those 10. I think 7. The only prospects they were taking above him are Victor, Zion, and then one of Markelle Fultz or Paolo. And I think the exact thing is said.
Are you sure?
Wait a minute. Wait.
Very
Harper keeps this up. I'm taking him over all these guys beside Victor.
That's over Zion. Zion.
Wilder, show some respect to Markelle Fultz in college.
Yeah, Markelle Fultz at
UW was super close.
Best college guard.
He was a nasty player at Washington, man. Yep. But I'll say this about Fultz while he got some crazy chase down blocks and things of that nature, Harper is so clearly ahead defensively at the same stage.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Washington was not winning, man. I'm just saying.
No, they wasn't.
No, and they had multiple NBA players with the losing record.
Harper's playing like obviously he has a better team around him.
He has another top 5 pick next to him.
I think Harper's more complete. I think he's Cade Cunningham with rim pressure at the same stage, guys. Like
I agree.
I'll say I think Dylan Fultz, I think that's a conversation from my memory of watching.
That's fair.
I think Dylan and Cade are a conversation. I think he goes over Wiseman very easily. I don't even think that's
Ant-Man.
Well, Ant-Man should have probably went one, but
prospect.
I'm thinking like just what we thought coming out of like when they were out. Wiseman was the number 1 guy. I would take Dylan over him. Zion goes 1. Victor goes 1. Paolo's a conversation. I think that's a legit conversation. But Paolo was so damn dominant, man.
Right.
Do we remember, guys? Paolo almost fell to 3 that year.
I think that was a
day. They said Jabari Smith was number 1.
That was a smoke screen.
No, Chet was a real guy, though. Chet was a guy.
Yeah,
I agree. I think both were guys. I think the most similar draft this year was 2022 at the top.
Yeah.
And I thought 2022 was kind of weak outside of the top 2. I was not on the Jabari stuff, but I know a lot of people who were. And I think there was some validity to the idea that he might have went 1. I don't think it was like a smokescreen because everybody kind of agreed he should have been in that conversation. So I don't think it was like, whoa. Jabari suddenly won.
I think we all could have, looking back now, and even then in that moment in time, been like, Jabari could not hang with Paolo Banchero as a prospect.
I agree.
Yeah, I felt like they're in 2 separate tiers.
But a lot of people did, man. That's all I'm saying. A lot of people thought Jabari was like number 1.
You know what, though? I feel like that's like Ace and Dylan Harper. We're going to talk about Ace and come back to this mock draft. Like Ace, the top 5 pick to me, he is not in Dylan Harper's class. And I think that's the same analogy to compare with Paolo and Jabari Smith in that 2022 class. There's
Ace can get there. Ace can get there.
I like Ace more than Jabari as a prospect. But like now,
I don't want to make it seem like I think Flagg and Dylan are in a tier about themselves. I want to start by saying that. But I think Ace can walk in the tier. He may not be like, okay, if we're in a room, Dylan and Flagg are in that room. They're at the top of the room. They're at the table by themselves. I think you can make another table and let Ace walk in the room. That's all I'm saying. I think so because I think his defense will translate. He is 6'9", 6'10". He's long. He's athletic. He's balled in on that end. I think his rebounding is really, really good for his position. I think his shot making out the three is insane. Like outside of the paint, he's the best shot maker out of all three of them. Like he's and the Jabari comp makes sense, but I think he's a much better ball handler than Jabari. I think that's the separate. So I think it's really just if he can get to the rim and if he can play make. If those two if he can show progress in those, I think he can get into the tier. He may not. I still think those two will be the 1 and 2 going forward. But Ace right now is fighting for 3 to 5. I think he can solidify himself at 3 if he can just up the playmaking or just up the ball handling and get to that rim.
That's fair.
I think we're jumping picks to picks right now, so I think it's good to continue.
Still in the second overall pick here, James. This is all
Number 2, I'm taking. Look, obviously Philadelphia has a lot of guards. They got Jared McCain, who looks awesome. They have Tyrese Maxey. I'm still going Dylan Harper. Number 2 overall. I just think when you have a tier 1 prospect who falls to you at 2, in my opinion, you take him every single time and you can figure out the other guys. And like I said, if he keeps up this level of just consistency at the rim, I think he's the number 1 prospect right now. I'm subject to change because Cooper Flagg is as awesome as you guys mentioned, but heliocentric guy. And I think a guy like Daryl Morey would look at him and say, I had a young James Harden. I could maybe mold him into that type of player. So I think Daryl Morey especially would run into a guy like Dylan Harper. So that's what I'll say.
I agree with that. That's a great take because we saw in the 2019 draft when the Cavaliers had Colin Sexton, who just made an all-rookie team, they still went with the best player that they felt was Darius Garland, even if there was that positional overlap. And Philly's in this weird spot where you don't know if Joel Embiid's going to come back the same player with the way he's looked this year and how he got injured so quickly once he did return. So I think they should be looking to take best player available. Now, the 3rd overall pick, the New Orleans Pelicans.
This is an interesting one, John. This is interesting.
It is an interesting decision. Now, the Pelicans kind of find themselves in this weird middle ground where you have Zion Williamson. Zion's not available. And so at this point, if I am David Griffin, I'm making decisions to keep my job, yes, but I really need to take the best player on the board.
Question, before you make this pick.
Yeah.
I want you to put this into your brain when you make this pick.
Okay.
Brandon Ingram is a free agent.
Mm-hmm.
You paid Trey Murphy. You have Herb Jones.
Mm-hmm.
You are John, but you're David Griffin.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us what you do with Brandon Ingram and then make this pick. I want to know where's your mindset at with that.
I'm looking to trade Brandon Ingram at the deadline. And I'm evaluating, can I get a first-round pick for him? Can I get a multitude of picks? Can I get some sort of return? If not, then you're going to have to let him hit unrestricted free agency with losing him an all-star for absolutely nothing, which is kind of a doomsday for any team. And I would offer Ingram an extension, but probably not for anything more than 32, 34 million. If I go up to that point of, high 30s, I think a lot of other teams are going to invest that money. Some poor teams, I shouldn't say poor teams, but teams that are in the lottery looking to upgrade and get star talent. So I would be willing to let him walk. And that leads me to the decision here. The Pelicans do have a lot of shooting. You got Trey Murphy, you have Jordan Hawkins, you have even CJ McCollum. There's a good amount of players in this lineup who all bring that 3-point shooting. And I do think that Igor Denham is a better prospect than Ace Bailey. At the point guard position, he brings a lot of versatility. This is someone who at 6'10" is a high-level decision maker. He plays well at pick and roll, and he has the tools to be a real two-way player. But also, to me, the upside to be a 3-level scorer. This is someone who gets downhill to the rim. He has projectable shooting. He's been efficient so far. We'll see how that efficiency sustains. And I look at this decision. It's between Bailey and Denham, but I'm going to really go with the positional need at point guard because you look at the Pelicans roster, CJ McCollum and DeJounte Murray are here, but they're not long-term solutions to a problem, which I felt has been looming for 5 years now, dating back to when they took Zion on the draft. So we're taking the best player on the board. We're taking the biggest positional need, and that is Igor Denham out of BYU.
Woo! Okay, I think the Pelicans are probably the most interesting team in this bunch because you have in theory a playoff team, right? A really good defense. You have a couple guards that can make some plays. You have wing defense. You have a go-to scorer. You have another go-to scorer, and yet this team they cannot stay on the court and they cannot figure out their issues and their woes. Now you're sitting here, and this might not, be the same. This could change, but you're sitting here and you're thinking, wow, I may have to look at this team. We may have to let a talent like Brandon Ingram go.
Mhm.
You know, that's very unfortunate. I think he's a really good player, and in a really good situation, he can make some things work. But back to my pick, we're at Toronto. I think this is an easy one. I think we saw Scotty Barnes kind of play point guard in a sense. You know, he's been playing really well at that position. You have RJ Barrett. You have IQ. I was thinking about Caspers, but I think you have to go best player available. And I think that right there is Ace Bailey. You draft him up in this position. Ace Bailey is head to Toronto Raptors. And look, you're getting yourself a guy who you can develop really well. This guy screams Tracy McGrady. He screams Brandon Miller. You know, those are the guys I see a lot of his play style. And yes, he does not get to the rim at this exorbitant rate. Okay. But I think Toronto, we trust their development. I think they've showed us some things in the past couple years. You know, granted, they were late picks in Pascal Siakam, Fred VanVleet, even Norman Powell to a degree, you know. But I think Ace Bailey, they need a star that's looming. I think he can be that type of guy for Toronto to fit next to Scotty. And I don't think Scotty's a go-to scorer. I think Ace Bailey can be that. I think he's a guy that can really set the tone. So go ahead and over and send Ace Bailey to Toronto to be a star.
That is a great pick. I think it's a great fit. And honestly, if I'm the Toronto Raptors and my young core is Scotty Barnes, Ace Bailey, RJ Barrett, Emmanuel Quickley, Ochai Agbaji, and Grady Dick, who's been playing a lot of minutes, been shooting that thing quite well, you've got a group that really fits. You've got a lot of complementary shooters. You've got a lot of secondary creators. And I think Ace would have a lot of opportunity to really realize his full potential. He's not going to be held back. I think his game really works well with Scotty and RJ.
Me too. I agree. I think Scott, like for me, that's the perfect scenario for Ace. Like go to Toronto, you know, head over there, develop well. And I like Ace. I really do. And I think he's balled in on the defensive end. Like he's really balled. And I think young players that are balled in that early, you see a different mental in their game. Like you see a willingness to learn. And I really like that from Ace Bailey.
Yeah, I haven't talked in a couple minutes. I was gone figuring out a bread situation. So
I figured out the bread situation. Good thing you got that done.
Yeah, there are two parts of the issue. There's three parts actually. Number one, bread issue. Number two, Adobe subscription controversy. And number three, my Bulldogs that snort louder than pigs were just running upstairs all of a sudden. Nice. So it was like it would have totally taken the attention off the show. But now I'll lock in off that tangent. So those two picks, I'm a big fan. Number 4, I agree with John. I'm an Igor Demon guy right now over Ace Bailey, but I think those two are the next group in this draft class. Right. And I think you get Trey Murphy and Herb Jones next to Igor Demon. I think that'd be super fun. And then Zion for the 18 games a year he plays will be fun.
That far off his average, unfortunately. I shouldn't be laughing at that. I apologize to our Pelicans listeners.
John's a horrible human being.
You tried to be a nice guy. Nah, bro, you laughed. It's okay.
Yeah, it's still
Raptors, man. Ace Bailey next to Scotty and RJ. I mean, the length, the athleticism,
versatility,
so fun. The versatility. He's comfortable playing off of those type of guys. That would be a dream fit. And now, who has pick 5?
You do. As a matter of fact, perfect that you came back.
I think Utah would love Igor Demon or even like an Ace Bailey. So I think they're upset here. But when I look at this next group of prospects, because I do think there's a next group here, and I think right now the most impressive player outside of those top 4 is Trey Johnson from Texas.
He's a demon.
He's a bucket.
Dude.
It's simple.
He is a shot maker, man. I mean, like Ace Bailey is the most talented guy, but Trey Johnson plays sort of like that in terms of the off-ball movement, the tough shot making, the three-point shooting. I look at a guy like Devin Vassell in San Antonio, and that's somebody I think of. And I think Trey Johnson's a better athlete than Devin Vassell. So I think he is the number 5 guy right now with the way he's playing.
I like that. Listen, Utah getting Igor and him, you've literally drafted your backcourt.
Yeah. And now you have Keontae George, your third guard, 6-man role, and it really does alleviate the pressure and the expectations.
Thank God, because he looks terrible.
Yeah, I had higher expectations than what we've seen so far. So
am I right? Was it Utah? Was it who had 3 and 4? It was Toronto 4, New Orleans.
Oh, yeah, it was Utah 4. I lied. No, I didn't
I'm
lie.
sorry, I have no idea what
Utah
draft
3.
class you're talking about.
It was Utah 3, Ronto 4.
Oh my gosh! I thought New Orleans had 3. Sorry. Okay, my point.
I lied.
Oh,
New
you're talking
Orleans
about
did have
this
3.
year's draft class.
Okay. I was like, my point made no sense at that point. So
That's on me.
that's all good. It's all good.
John, you're up, buddy.
With the 6th overall pick, the Charlotte Hornets have a big decision to make. This is a team that recently took Tijon Solon in the lottery last year, and they don't have a specific position outside center, I would say, where you really can upgrade. Got LaMelo Ball, got Brandon Miller, Miles Bridges. I look at this position, or specifically this draft spot, and I have a tough time making this pick. And if I'm the Charlotte Hornets, a team that is still struggling, it's a squad that defensively has really been quite poor, and then offensively they have not really elevated LaMelo. I have to go with the best player on the board, and that is VJ Edgecombe out of Baylor. But I don't know if that is the right landing spot for VJ to go to with how many wings that are currently in the situation that are priorities to develop. VJ is one of the best athletes we see in the draft. He's an energetic, above the rim wing who does play well without the ball. The one question is how well he can shoot. Right now at Baylor, he's not really making them quite well. He's 8 of 30 so far, and that is definitely going to be the swing skill in him being a key reserve versus a guy with star potential. So if I'm Charlotte here, I want to go VJ. What do you guys think? Would you go with the best player available, or are you going with someone who maybe fits more in the need department?
The thing is, VJ might be the best player available. So I don't think his game is. You know how sometimes you have those players where they don't look great in college, but then when they go to the NBA, it's much easier for them. They're just not college players. Usually in college, it's very systematic. It's very whatever the coach puts out there, you have to follow suit. I think VJ Edgecombe is probably the best athlete in this draft class, if not the best, a top 3, top 5 athlete in this draft class. I think defensively he can buy in. And I kind of think he needs a point guard like LaMelo that can kind of, set him up for open looks, hit backdoor cuts, be on the move. They need some athleticism. They need somebody that can play defense next to LaMelo. I'm looking at Nolan. I don't think you need to go get another point guard. I'm looking at Caspers, another point guard. I don't think so. I wouldn't take Khan over VJ either. There's not really a big I'd go in the top 5 unless you want to develop and go Malak. But I think you already have Mark Williams. You don't want to wait too long. LaMelo could be gone soon. So I like VJ here. I think it makes sense.
My assistant GM does acquiesce to the decision. What do you think, James?
I'm a fan of VJ at this spot. I agree. He might be a guy better suited in the NBA with spacing and, his motor, his intensity. I just think that fits Charlotte so well. So that's what I would add.
That is the decision then. And I do agree. He reminds me a bit of a guy maybe, and he is further along than Jaylen Brown was as a prospect. But that is the type of player who, if everything clicks with his athleticism, his versatility, he's going to earn minutes as a rookie because of his defensive repertoire and his upside on that end. But it really just comes down to can he create shots. And I think if everything clicks with him, he can be one of those 2 guards. But it's really just a matter of getting him in the right situation with a good shooting coach. So VJ Edgecombe with the 5th overall pick or 6th overall pick to the Hornets.
I wish he was bigger. That's the only thing. 6'3" or so, maybe 6'4", 6'5" wingspan. I wish he was bigger. I wish he was a little longer, especially. Okay. All right now. All right. That's crazy. That's crazy. I wish he had more of a wingspan to keep it. I don't think you could take that out of context. So, yep. And then am I 7 now?
Yep. No, this is me.
Oh, it's you. I have no idea where I'm at.
Yeah, you're after me.
This is the big dog. So that's why I said, yeah.
All right, so we got San Antonio here. Chris Paul probably retires, hopefully. His brother, he's old. It's time to call it a great Hall of Fame first ballot career, Chris Paul. Victor, we're going to talk about the Spurs later, but they've been humming on offense and defense. They've been playing really well to start the year. I'm going to go Caspers from Illinois. That's what I'm going to do. I'm gonna go Caspers Jacomsians. I don't even know if I said his last name right. Nolan's been falling. Listen, Nolan's offensive game has been falling. I'm going to take a flyer, and I'm going to go with the bigger guard. I think placing him next to Stephon Castle makes sense. I like his playmaking ability. I like his aggressiveness at times. I like his jump shot. It's streaky, but I like the form. 6'6". I think they need a point guard in general. I don't mind going Nolan. I just think right now his offensive game is a little bit further away than Casper's is at the moment. So I'll take him with the 7th pick to go in San Antonio.
Yeah, I agree. I think Nolan Traore, he's really struggled offensively as a scorer. And he's had moments as a scorer earlier in the year. He had like that 45-point game against I think it was an under 18 game where he had 45, and he's had moments, but yeah, he's had issues. And I agree. I think how do you say his name properly?
Don't ask me.
KJ, that works.
Capuchionis. I'll roll with that. I'm so bad with the names, but his playmaking's been awesome this year, and he's got great size, and I think his shooting is better than the stats suggest at this point. So I think there's good indicators.
So you guys go point guard back-to-back years with the Spurs. I don't hate it personally. I do like Stephon Castle as that combo guard. 8th overall pick, James. What do you got for the Blazers?
Portland's intriguing.
Dude, they are. Let me load up my big board to think about it, because I posted a big board on Twitter today because I saw Riv do it.
Copycat.
Look, you guys.
Right?
Keep using the pod.
Okay, so Portland's an interesting team, as you alluded to. It's one of those weird spots where I think a lot of the best players available aren't fits necessarily.
Yeah.
And I think they might go conservative here and get that complementary type player. I'm going to go Knuppel from Duke. I'm going to go, it feels like a slight reach, but when I watch him, he kind of reminds me of like a Bogdanovich from Atlanta, that type of player. Just somebody who he can really shoot. I think his shooting's going to continue picking up. He's got some creation. He's got solid size. Not my number 8 guy in this draft, but I think it's a safe pick for Portland.
Okay. I think if you're Portland here, you have to go with the best player available, but at this stage, it's very hard to land a star player. So that's where you just do kind of lean toward the guy who's going to fit in best, and his skill set does project well.
Yeah, Portland's in this tricky situation where they're kind of Shaden's been playing really well lately. You're gonna kind of have to like pick a guy that fits around Klingon, Shaden, and Scoot if you still believe in Scoot. You know, so like because you're gonna like you're picking these top guys, these projects. Now it's time to put it together. You know,
right.
Now it's time to start to really assemble a squad. You have Denny Advia, who's been struggling but playing well as of the last 2 or 3 games. So now you have to figure out what you want. And I think Connect. You know what you're getting from him. A good connector, a really good floor spacer. I think that's kind of what you need in the gray area. A lot of these guys, you know, you don't want Nolan. You don't need another point guard. You don't want to go back-to-back point guards. You want to give Scoot some time. You don't want to go Boogie. So I think Khan makes sense here.
I don't disagree. Now, with the 9th overall pick, I've got the Detroit Pistons selection.
Do my brother right here.
That has definitely been better and more competitive this year. They've added in some key veterans like Tobias Harris, Malik Beasley, and things have came together. I think the biggest thing has been Jaden Ivey's improvement with a coach, JB Bickerstaff, who has really implemented him better and more effectively. And if I am the Pistons, I'm looking to get a shooter long term. And I want to go with the best player on the board, sure, but last year he did that with Ron Holland. So to me, the pick here is going to be Liam McNeely out of UConn, a smooth shooting forward who can project into the Tobias Harris replacement. And I think this fits in quite well with Cade as a good secondary option, a cutter, passer, decision maker. He does a lot of good things in the offensive end. I do want to see more of him. It's really established. Is this a top 10 pick? So as I search for him here in the draft board, I'm in the point guard section. I'm like, well, I can't find him. I think that's the best route for the Pistons to go. Liam McNeely out of Duke.
Okay, I like that. That's your guy. Wilder, speak on him.
He's my guy.
Yeah.
When did that happen?
I remember you were talking about him one day. I just attached him. I just attached him to you.
I don't want to be a hater on him. I like him. I think he's got size. He's got connectivity. He's got feel. You know, we saw what he did in Montverde, and now I think he's one of those players where the programs he's played in, he's kind of built up to be exactly what he's going to be in the NBA as he was in high school and college. So he'll go to a team like Detroit and be really comfortable playing that off-ball complementary floor spacing role. And I think he could do it. He's got size. I think he's a better athlete than people think. Sneaky athletic.
Sneaky athletic, yep. That's exactly what I thought when I looked at
Gym
him.
rat, high IQ.
High IQ, plays the game the right way.
Yeah, man, just the type of guy you would love to date your
Won't beat
daughter.
himself.
No,
Yep.
no, but yeah, he's a solid prospect, and I think he fits next to K. I think it's a good pick.
I think what's funny, like just like sit here and think like all these guys that go to Mount Verde have played together for 3 to 4 years. Like he was on the roster probably like his freshman year, sophomore year. How many dudes? He's probably seen Dariq Whitehead play. Maybe he's seen like these guys played with some top-notch talent. Like Montverde pushes out so much talent. It's insane. Chicago Bulls, man. This is my old team, my former team here.
Zion team.
Former team.
Yeah.
This is interesting. You got Kobe White. I think Kobe White's a good player. What are you going to do with Josh Giddey? He is statistically, listen, statistics don't help that brother. Like the bland stats do, but advanced numbers, my God.
They don't paint a pretty picture.
They don't paint a pretty picture. I do think he's one of the worst guard defenders I've ever seen. At his size, just being that slow-footed, being just not disciplined on the defensive end, not paying attention to where he is, not knowing positioning. It's really bad. Chicago, you paid Pat Will. He hasn't really, been a good spot like you wanted to do. Zach LaVine's playing well. You're probably going to trade him. Vooch, you're probably going to move. They're going project. And I think that because they go project, give me the 7-2 demon. Give me Kaman Malak here. We're gonna go with project. They haven't had a defensive center since Joakim Noah. And shout out to Joakim Noah because he was one of them dudes on defense that really anchored the defense. They haven't had that in a while. They had Vooch. They kind of wanted more offense. Vooch has been playing well this year, but he's not really the defensive center you want. And you're in the East. You have Giannis. You have Embiid. Why not go grab a 7-2 guy like yourself and go build the defense around him? I think Chicago doesn't really have anything outside of Matas Buzelis, who I think is going to be a gem on defense. Why not go pair him with a rim protector like Malak? I think they go project here, and I think they take him.
I think Kamal Malwatch is still one of the most underrated long-term prospects in this entire draft. I think the best version of Malwatch can be one of the very best players in this class. Because you're talking about, we can look at the profile, 7'2". I think he has like a 9'5" or 9'7" standing reach, but the defensive upside's real. I think he's got good touch, and we've seen at lower levels when he's asked to space the floor, he's got a good foundation as a shooter. I think he's got some guard skills that he could build into. He's got a really good foundation, and I think the best version of he can be one of the best players in the class. So I think it's a good bet.
James, you're up next with the 11th overall pick, the Sacramento Kings.
Interesting spot. It's a weird team, man, because I think they need more shooting and spacing. So if they're at this spot, okay. I got to think about this one. Can you go up on the board a little bit?
Oh yeah, I got you.
Thank you. Okay. That's the funny thing about draft boards, man. It's like the boards never line up with where teams actually pick.
Yeah, Sacramento shouldn't be here for too long.
There's one guy who's by far the best prospect, in my opinion, available, but
and take him.
I'm not. It's one of those one of those good enough prospects where I think he'd be really good, but not sure if he would thrive on the wrong team. I would say I am going to go with Hugo Gonzalez here.
Right where I was going.
Wait a minute. They're talking about he might be a second-round stash now.
Really?
He's struggling that much?
No, he hasn't played much.
Spain is you're playing.
I love his talent.
Real Madrid. He's playing on those kids almost never play.
No, I love his talent, Wilder. I think he's a top 15 pick. But I'm saying because he hasn't played, teams are thinking like he might fall. All this nonsense. You know how draft stuff gets. I love Hugo.
He's got size, man. He's got a great motor. He can play make, get to the rim. You wish he was a better shooter. You wish he was a better shooter. One guy I was thinking about here was Will Riley from Illinois. I was thinking about him, but I'm not huge on Riley, so I'm just going to go Hugo at 11. Not my number 11 guy, but it's a weird team at pick 11. So
absolutely. Because they're trying to win now, but they still could upgrade the best player available. There's no positional need. So, yeah, it's definitely a tough spot to pick. Now, my turn, 12th overall selection, the Jazz get their third first-round pick, third lottery pick here,
Goodness.
by way of the Minnesota Timberwolves. The last pick, possibly, of the Rudy Gobert trade. If it's not the last, second to last. And
We have plenty more.
yeah, plenty more. Okay, so
I think it goes all the way out to
inaccurate.
27
15.
and then maybe 29.
Oh,
Okay. I have to sneeze. Maybe not. Now, at the 12th overall pick, the player who I want to select, I'm surprised is not very high up on this board, and that is Boogie Fland out of Arkansas for the Utah Jazz. We're going to stack up on guard on this team because with the Jazz, they definitely could use more wings, right? You look at their depth chart after Lauri Markkanen, after Taylor Hendricks, who did, of course, suffer a brutal season-ending injury. There's not much more after those guys. John Collins is playing quite well, productive, but maybe not that long-term piece. So I would rather go with a win here, but at the same exact time, there's not one wing who stands out to me more as a better prospect than Flynn of Arkansas. He is a smaller guard, yes. Him and Keontae George are going to kind of run that second unit, and we're getting here a very dynamic offensive player, someone who I think has the shooting, the passing, and just overall the juice and that punch off the bench to kind of complement the playmaking of Denim. And here for the Utah Jazz, I'm just going to continue going best player available and let Will Hardy mold the rest.
I'm a fan of the pick, huge fan. I think Boogie Fland, the problem with those small guards is if they're at the wrong team, if the wrong teams have picks in the middle of the lottery, they fall. They just do. And like a dude like Dillingham last year might go higher if a team of need is higher in the draft, right?
Yeah, no doubt.
And that's just how it works. I think Boogie Fland, and by the way, I think his defense is underrated. He plays super hard. And by the way, I'm sorry if you hear background noise. There's doorbell ring. But,
all those Arkansas guards do defend for the most part. A lot of them do.
Yep. So I really think he's a really good high upside pick. So I'm a fan.
My turn. It's my turn. Dallas has the 13th pick.
Yep. Lottery selection, Riv.
That's fucking weird. Okay. Dallas goes. Scroll down for me. Go to all. I don't know why you always go to point guard.
Sorry, I couldn't help myself.
Go to all, man.
I'm on all, man.
This is an interesting team. Scroll up a little bit.
It's as high as it goes.
Scroll down a little bit. Give me Ben Seraph. We're going with him right here at 13. I like his game. Yeah, I think he's a solid shooter, good ball handler, a little bit of a good playmaker. I don't think Dallas needs much, because I think Kyrie's going to stay there long term. You have Luka. Klay Thompson's still good for another year or two. You have P.J. Washington. You have Washington, Marshall, Lively, and Gafford that kind of shores up your front court. And I think Ben Seraph is a good replacement for Jaden Hardy unless they want to keep him, or Dante Exum. And I think you can develop him. So give me him here. I think Dallas doesn't stay here, but if they was here by some miracle, Ben Cyrus should be their pick.
Okay. Welcome to what is it? December now. Welcome to early December basketball, where weird teams are late in the lottery.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. One thing about him that I don't like is he has no right hand right now, like no right hand.
Yeah.
And I think at this point of his career, with the skills and the size, I think he makes a lot of sense playing off of a Luka as a complementary player. Sort of like another Israeli Deni Avdija in a way. And I have the last pick, right?
You do. 14
Okay,
overall
I think
selection.
Spurs at 14.
Yep.
I don't know how this happened. I don't know how this guy fell. I think one of the biggest risers in this year's draft so far, I'm going with Derek Queen from Maryland. All the way down to 14. I have him actually early in the year, number 6. So this is great value for San Antonio. When I watch him, some guys I think of are, I see a little bit Alper Şengün, a little bit, and I see a little bit of Al Jefferson. Just
Post-up powerhouse, Al Jefferson. What do you know about him?
Post-up powerhouse.
Demon footwork. Demon footwork.
The biggest piece in the Kevin Garnett trade.
Yep.
Yeah, just the timing, the creativity, the footwork. He's got playmaking feel, and I think he can extend it out a little bit. So I think he has a chance to be an offensive stud, despite being a slightly undersized center, slightly, not significantly, but a little bit. And he's got some rim protecting chops. unlike an Al Jefferson or an Alper Şengün early in his career. So I think 14 next to Victor might be really fun. So there you have it. That is John disappeared. But here is our 2025 mock draft 1.0. I'm sure we'll have a couple more. Oh,
Yes,
he's just
sir.
getting out of Fansville. Gotcha. We've had some screen freeze issues that we're trying to compensate for. But yeah, here's our 2025 NBA draft. So one thing I'll do before we transition for Instagram reel purposes, I want all of us to just kind of like Adam Silver talk about each draft pick and announce it. I think we should do that for Instagram reel purposes, so it isn't a circus editing.
Let's do it.
Thank you very much. The two of us were very grateful.
All right, you want to load up the – okay, you already typed it. Oh, man, you're
Thank you. Roll up the order so I know. Okay.
All right, let's go.
With the first pick in the 2025 NBA draft, the Washington Wizards will take Cooper Flagg.
It's time for my Adam Silver impression. With the second pick of the 2025 NBA draft, the Philadelphia 76ers select Dylan Harper from Rutgers.
With the third overall pick in the 2025 NBA draft, the New Orleans Pelicans select Igor Denham, point guard at BYU.
And with the fourth pick in the 2025 NBA draft, the Toronto Raptors select Ace Bailey from Rutgers University.
With the fifth pick in the 2025 NBA draft, the Utah Jazz select Trey Johnson from Texas.
With the sixth overall pick, the Charlotte Hornets select VJ Edgecombe, guard out of Baylor. Did I pronounce it right?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm not going to pronounce this guy's name right. With the seventh pick in the NBA draft, I apologize in advance. I'm sorry. Let me start that again. With the seventh pick in the NBA draft, I apologize in advance. The San Antonio Spurs will take Kasparas Jacosionis from Illinois.
I would have said that wrong too.
I think you did pretty good.
I think I did all right for times I mess up. I think I did all right.
Mock draft 1.0. Yeah, 7-8 months till the draft. That's pretty good.
Yeah, thank you.
With the what pick is it? Okay. With the 8th overall pick in the 2025 NBA draft, the Portland Trail Blazers select Con Knuppel from Duke.
With the 9th overall pick in the 2025 NBA draft, the Detroit Pistons select Liam McNeely, wing forward out of UConn.
And with the 10th pick in the 2025 NBA draft, the Chicago Bulls With the 10th pick in the NBA draft, the Chicago Bulls select Kaman Malak from Duke.
With the 11th pick in the 2025 NBA draft, the Sacramento Kings select Hugo Gonzalez from Real Madrid. It's Real Madrid, right?
Yes.
I think it is. Yes, I thought. Okay.
There you go.
Sweet.
With the 12th overall pick in the 2025 NBA draft, the Utah Jazz select Boogie Fland, guard out of Arkansas. For a second there, I was like, did I say that right? And I was like, yes. Okay.
With the 13th pick in the NBA draft, the Dallas Mavericks take Ben Serif from Israel.
With the 14th pick in the 2025 NBA draft, the San Antonio Spurs select Darren Queen. With the 14th pick in the 2025 NBA draft, the San Antonio Spurs select Derek Queen from Maryland. And there you have it. Here's our first mock draft. I'm sure it's going to change a lot. And now we are going to quickly transition to the next part of the show, actually with the San Antonio Spurs, who had the last pick in our first mock draft. So the Spurs are 10-9 right now, guys. Chris Paul looks great. Victor Wembanyama looks great. They might be good. They might be. I'm just curious. So for this topic, how close are they to being really good again? John, I'll start with you.
I think the San Antonio Spurs are taking that step forward that everyone expected, maybe a year early, because oftentimes we look at these teams with the first overall pick that maybe you're dealing with some guys that are young and trying to develop, and it usually takes 2 to 3 years to take that step forward to being a playing caliber team. And the thing that really stands out most to me is what they've been able to do defensively. On that side of the ball, Victor Wembanyama gives you a floor, which I think pretty quickly is outside of the bottom 10 in the NBA. You're no longer going to be in the depths and the dungeons, which made them the type of team who can get the first overall pick. When you have a terrible defense, you're a lot more likely to win 17 to 22 games. And along with Victor Wembanyama, what I've liked to see with their offense is just more structure with Chris Paul and Stephon Castle as well, who they take in the first round of this last year's draft. And he, as a starter, has played a lot better, a little bit up and down at times for a rookie guard. You can kind of expect that oftentimes. But I would just say with San Antonio, the biggest difference has been an extra year for Victor Wembanyama, who, again, is leading the league in blocks at 3.6. And that type of foundation just uplifts the rest of the group because it gives you a real floor for the first time. Along with that, you have more veterans alongside Chris Paul. Harrison Barnes becomes player of the week, something that I didn't really think would happen this season. But Harrison Barnes is the type of shooter where you put enough veterans in this group who have high-level floor spacing, just good experience to play off the ball. It kind of provides more of that, again, that foundation for Victor to play off of. But I think the next step for the Spurs team is really finding a shot creator to ease the burden off of Victor, because they have given him the keys to this offense and the responsibilities of running the show. But with how young he is, with how, I guess you could say, Pharrell, he kind of can play. He is someone who takes half of his attempts from beyond the arc, and oftentimes those shots aren't going in. It doesn't make Victor a viable to good kind of engine of an offense. So I think right now, San Antonio, what they're really lacking is a better version of Devin Vassell, someone who really can ease the burden. I think until they get that, you can expect them to be anywhere from this range of, 11 to 7 or 8 seed. But right now, they're, of course, kind of hovering in that mix right around 500. So far, it's been a pretty nice start to the year for San Antonio.
Go ahead, James.
Okay. So I agree with everything you said to a big extent. I just want to start off by saying I was the idiot like 3 or 4 weeks ago who said Victor is not taking his major leap this year and it's going to happen next year, and that Chet and we were better right now. That's stupid. He's really freaking good. Ever since I've said that, he's averaging like 26 and 11 and like 4 blocks, something crazy like that. He's really freaking good. And San Antonio, like you mentioned, taking a big defensive leap. They were near bottom of the league last year.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're at 11 on defensive rating. And recently they've been playing up lately. Stephon Castle, who was my number 1 prospect in 2024, he's playing fantastic. His last 10 games, he's given you 16 points, nearly 6 assists, 3 rebounds a game. I think this dude, you're talking about, can San Antonio find that second guy? I think a couple years, maybe 3, 4, 5 years down the road, I think there's a chance Stephon Castle's that guy, because I truly believe his upside as a downhill creator works so well next to Victor Wembanyama long term. And I love Chris Paul just overseeing that team and setting these young players up, and some players not playing too over their skis. Like Devin Vassell could play 35 minutes a game last year, be one of the worst wing defenders in the league, and keep playing. This year he's down to 23 minutes a game. And that's just a sign of a team that's putting those expectations on players, playing competitively. You don't need a player to just be really bad at one thing but still play 30 minutes. There's expectations. We're seeing Chris Paul elevate these guys. I really like what I see. And like you said, maybe they, especially when Chris Paul might not be there next year, find another creator to ease the burden as these other kids grow up, until a guy like Stephon Castle is ready, if he gets there, which I think he could.
Yeah, I think you guys pretty much hit all the topics. I think Chris Paul, man. Chris Paul is just an innovator. He's somebody that breathes new life into a culture. He breathes new life into a building. I mean, everywhere he's gone, they've been winning. Whether it be, winning multiple playoff series or just making the playoffs in general, they've been competitive. And I think that's important. Even at this age and this stage of his career, he still finds a way to make this team competitive. And you need those vets. I mean, look at what vets are doing for that Houston Rockets team, in Dylan Brooks, in Fred VanVleet, and then you have the coach in Ime. I think for this team, Greg Popovich, then you have Harrison Barnes, you have Chris Paul. You just have vets. Shout out to Harrison Barnes for winning. He won Player of the Week. I don't think he's ever won that in his life. So for him to win that, extremely credit to how this team is playing really well. You have Victor, who's been a defensive machine, blocking shots. Stephon Castle, who's just he knows where to be on the basketball court. He's just a connector on both ends. Defensively, he's bought in. Offensively, he can give you the little things, and he plays on the margins, man. He really values the extra hard work on the court, the aggressiveness, the attention to detail. And I think the Spurs team is solid. Now, will they'll finish, in the play-in or in the play-in hunt? I think the goal is just to be in the play-in hunt. I think for them to overachieve would be to make the playoffs. I think the West is just so stacked right now. But this team wanted to be competitive. You drafted a generational prospect in Victor, who's been playing at a elite rate at the moment. And I think that's important. And I think you have the guys right now to where you're comfortable where you're at. You're comfortable in just competing. And, I like where the Spurs are at right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to not. I mean, this is a team that, one thing to mention, has been without Jeremy Shohan, who's had a fractured thumb. Devin Vassell has missed the majority of this year. And yeah, he did just come back, but just 5 games for Vassell and 7 games for Shohan. And those are 2 of the 5 guys we look at as the core starters, the core building blocks, the pair alongside Victor. Not have those guys. At times, it kind of can be a blessing because it narrows down a rotation to a select 8 or 9 guys, opposed to having 10 to 12 to really have to worry about developing. That's one thing that Golden State's had to deal with for Steve Kerr. It's been a headache at times. And I think in a vacuum, when you do kind of have so many different young players to machinate between, it just allows you to now focus on Stephon Castle, Victor Wembanyama, and then everybody else around them. And I think, one thing we highlighted, 22nd last year defensively, 11th now this year. But Chris Paul, throughout his career, he has played in the NBA now for 19 years. At no point has he ever been a negative when he's on the floor. And this year, he has one of the highest plus minuses of his career at a plus 15.1 points per 100 possessions. Defensively, they're 9.5 points better. Yeah, he's not quick, agile, and versatile as he was back in 2012 or 2009 when he was making all defensive teams. But just having someone who on the offensive end provides infrastructure, it just sells down the rest of the team. It kind of instills that confidence, that integrity around the entire group. And I think that was clearly one of the best moves of the offseason, plus 35 expected wins. I mean, it's absurd to think they've been this much better with him on the floor, but it really does go to show. Trey Jones, another guy that's missed a good amount of time. Chris Paul's just a better version of that, and somebody who kind of can be that go-to guard at times. In certain games, he can kind of rough it up, just not as consistently as you'll like. This dude's about to turn 40 years old. So
yeah, and shout out to Jeremy Sohan. I think he's like the perfect Swiss Army knife for them. He doesn't have a elite trait at the moment, but he does all the little things. He plays defense well. He's a good connector. He's a good ball handler. Kind of gives you that, not Draymond Green, but Draymond Green light, where he can be that Swiss Army knife, that, tenacious player, somebody like a Marcus Smart type for your team. And I think they've built a solid 3-4 core players right now with Castle, with Sohan, Victor at the top, and then Vassell.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things here. I think that's a really good sign for San Antonio. It's never great for players to be hurt necessarily, but I think it's a really good sign when you can figure out who with the right opportunities. I think Julian Champagnie is one example of that. Just a guy who has started every game this year. He's hitting open threes. He's got some offense. He's got size. He can guard 3 positions. San Antonio's at that stage where they're kind of figuring out these guys can be staple rotation guys. And a guy like Julian Champagnie is able to solidify himself to that extent. And then you look at guys, like I said, when you have so many options like that, of course, Devin Vassell is easing his way back in still. But if he's not playing defense like he wasn't last year, you don't have to play him 35 minutes anymore. You can play him 25. You can build those kids up. Let them, play through their mistakes, but let them earn their opportunity because they have enough options for that. And I also, before we transition, I want to talk about Chris Paul's legacy a little bit, because he's probably just, unless something happens next year, he signs and ring chases, he might not end up winning an NBA championship, right? But we talk about one of the greatest point guards ever, and I think one staple Chris Paul will have that we just haven't really seen much in NBA history is just a guy who just a Hall of Fame all-time great who elevates young players to such a massive extent year after year after year, whether it's Devin Booker, whether it's Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, whether it's a young Blake Griffin, young DeAndre Jordan, whether it's now Victor Wembanyama and Stephon Castle. I think Chris Paul's legacy as a winner is going to be the guy who helps teams establish long-term success through he being the ultimate bridge. I think Chris Paul has a chance to establish himself as the best bridge player in NBA history, which might not sound like the most sexy, glamorous title, but I think there's value into bridges, and I think Chris Paul might be the greatest we've ever seen that way.
That's a great point. And I guess I don't want to make this entirely Chris Paul dependent, but I do want to highlight this because this is a thing I've always felt for my entire time as an NBA fan. Chris Paul is the top 4 point guard of all time. You can split hairs between him and Isaiah, and I get that. You want to take Isaiah above him? Fine. 2-time NBA champion, finals MVP. And I agree with that. Isaiah Thomas is in that discussion. I'm taking Chris Paul over the likes of Steve Nash, John Stockton, Jason Kidd. And the reason why is the misconceptions around Chris Paul throughout his entire career. People look at the playoff success. And oftentimes, I think what's misconstrued is Chris Paul is a playoff overachiever. You're right. We judge him for at 35 and 36 years old, not raising his level of play in the playoffs. But I think what's often forgotten is the young Chris Paul, the 22-year-old Chris Paul, the Chris Paul who in 2008 goes toe-to-toe with Tim Duncan and one of the greatest dynasties in NBA history, the San Antonio Spurs, with not only Tim Duncan and Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili, but a great supporting cast and Greg Popovich. And Chris Paul is taking that exact group to 7 games in the semifinals. Someone who in the playoffs in that specific series is averaging 24 points, 11 assists, 3 steals, one of the best defenders of his position, and just a complete game. If you go back and look at that Chris Paul, and then you look at the longevity from 2008 to 2022, Chris Paul is the second best player, arguably the most important player on a 64-win Suns team. His 14 to 15 years of elite point guard play is something that I value a lot more when he had the same exact peak performance as Isaiah Thomas and a lot of those other star guards. And I think the way he's elevated his teams is often at the front page of the cover when we talk about Chris Paul. It's all-time longevity with KD, LeBron, and Steph. But what's forgotten is the peak version of Chris Paul, someone who was at his peak, arguably a top 5 player in the game, someone who had complete control. If you disagree, I know there's a lot of people out there that will disagree with that statement. That's fine. Look at the New Orleans Hornets in 2005 before they drafted Chris Paul, an 18-win Suns team, 18-win Suns team. The Suns were also an 18-win team, and they signed Rubio, and a year later signed Paul, and they're a 55-win team damn near. You look at the 2005 New Orleans Hornets, and then you look at them 3 years later. Chris Paul's second year, his third season, that same 18-win team is winning 56 games at a time where conferences, and the Western Conference was packed, but divisions mattered back then. And division with teams like the Mavericks, the Spurs, the Rockets. Chris Paul was leading a team which really didn't have a whole lot. He was elevating David West. He was saving the career of Tyson Chandler. And he was elevating a late-stage Peja Stojakovic and Morris Peterson. He was turning that team with very little depth into an elite team, a team that was good enough to go against the San Antonio Spurs, with him being the sole star. And I think that is something which is often forgotten. So that's my Chris Paul tangent. I think he is the most underappreciated point guard in NBA history, and he is easily top 5. And I think he's the 4th best point guard ever.
You won't really get too much pushback from me, honestly. Like, I laughed and I giggled, but the same way how you feel about Chris Paul, I feel about Steve Nash. And I think after Magic, after Steph, I feel like 3 to 6 are all like interchangeable. You can have an argument for Nash, Kidd, Chris Paul, John Stock, like all these guys. Like after those first 2 guys, Isaiah, like there's a legit argument for all those guys being 3, 4, 5. So you won't get much pushback from me personally.
I would take Isaiah number 3 still, personally. But Chris Paul is great. I think there's still a layer of his longevity is fantastic, but I think we do have to acknowledge the layer of his career that's missing that doesn't propel him into that top group. In the biggest moments of his career, he always gets hurt at the most inopportune time. That's just the unfortunate story of his career, and it does hold back his all-time ranking, but it doesn't necessarily take away the value he brings as a player. Like I said, he's probably, especially in the latter half of his career, the greatest bridge point guard in NBA history, So there's something to that. He's a franchise player, of course, especially through his first, 18 years of his career. Mm-hmm. But I think there's a ton of value because I'm not sure if there's any player in NBA history who's helped develop star players to the extent Chris Paul has. So that's a really cool and really unique background to his career that I don't think anybody else has really done. So
maybe Kidd, kind of.
Kid,
but not to the extent of Chris Paul, of
but
course.
not to the extreme. I mean, Chris Paul goes from Shea, who was a young kid, unestablished, to Devin Booker, to, I mean, Victor, Stephon Castle might follow that group. We'll see there. There's a lot of really insane examples, and of course, like prime Chris Paul when he was the franchise player. DeAndre Jordan has 3 All-NBA teams. You know what I mean? So I think Chris Paul, is it 2 or 3? It's 2 or 3 for sure. But
yeah, a couple.
He deserves a lot of credit.
Can I ask you guys one question? I didn't mean to cut you off. Continue.
I was just going to transition. So,
All right. I have a very important question because I did mention before, I want to hold myself accountable. Chris Paul at his peak was arguably a top 5 point guard. Sorry, I said that. I said Chris Paul at his peak was arguably a top 5 player in the NBA. 100%. I want to go back to peak Chris Paul in 2008. I think that's his peak individual performance. How many players in 2008 were better than Chris Paul? Name you some. If you want to add a couple.
4.
You think
3 or 4?
Who are those players?
3 or 4.
LeBron, D Wade, Kobe,
Tim Duncan.
Dwight. Oh, wow, 5.
Tim Duncan's 5 then.
Yeah, I would say Dwight for sure. Like the 09, 010, like between 08 and 010, I think like
010.
those were the 4. Yeah, my fault. Between 08 and 10, I think those were the 4 or 5. But you can argue Chris Paul and Dwight. It's really about what you value. Do you value the defensive demon in Dwight or the offensive demon in Chris Paul? But I think like consensus, like there's no argument in my mind. LeBron, Kobe, Wade, and Tim Duncan. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think maybe that year, I'm sure he was better than one of those guys, especially because that was kind of the point of Tim Duncan's career where his offense started to take off a little bit. Around that point, he went from being the legit 20-point per game guy to more high teens. So you can make the argument Chris Paul was better than Duncan that year. I was 5. I don't know.
Yeah, I think he was better than Carmelo though. I think he was better than Dirk. I think he was better than KG. Like I think he's better than those guys.
The question becomes: would you take Dirk Nowitzki in 2008 or Chris Paul?
I'd take Chris Paul.
Yeah,
I think we're splitting hairs.
Yeah, you definitely are. But I think I'd take Chris Paul.
I'll agree, but like I said, I was
right.
5.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
You know,
that is the type of player that we're talking about. At his peak, there was maybe 4 to 5 players better. In 2008, Dwayne Wade missed 30 games. The Heat missed the playoffs. And that season, top 5 player in the NBA to me. So I think that is where was Isaiah Thomas a top 5 player at his peak, arguably, right? So that's where I really kind of reinforced that point where peak Chris Paul is a demon. I think he gets underappreciated. Put him in the same group as Dwight Howard. That's someone who at his peak was the best center that I watched up until Nikola Jokic. So
peak IT was easy top 5. Peak Isaiah Thomas when they won 2 titles, easy.
Yep.
Okay.
He was probably 4. We had Magic, Bird, MJ, and then like Hakeem. So yeah.
At 5, you're looking at a couple of
Carmelo.
Barkley, Pippen, Ewing, Isaiah. Yeah.
I mean, he was the best player on the championship team. And at that point in time, especially early in their little championship run, that was really before Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen took the league by storm. So we're not talking about the point where those two were established fully yet. So you have to say he was better than Pippen at least.
No, he was better than Pippen. I don't even think Pippen just got there in 87, 88.
Plus
Pippen
Jordan was hurt that one year.
I'm thinking of 90s.
Third year.
Was
it his third year?
No, Pippen was hurt.
Yeah, the Jordan had that one year where he averaged like 37, but he played like.
Yeah, that was year 2.
That was year 2. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, okay. I think we squeezed the juice out of the Chris Paul topic.
Crying at
right.
that.
Last topic of the day, guys. So let's talk about Franz Wagner. We were starting out the year, we were pretty critical of Franz Wagner because we were like, dude, you sucked Game 7 last year, and you're not doing a lot this year so far. But now we've seen him absolutely dominate Orlando. They just keep winning basketball games. I think they've won 12 of their last 13 now since they've won today against Brooklyn. So let's bring back this Franz Wagner conversation right now. What are you guys thinking right now, Riv?
Apparently, John has something to say to me. I'm looking at his efficiency, 55th percentile in true shooting, 50th percentile in three-point percentage. He's playing well. I've never disputed that. My whole problem was always, his three-point shot, which is being carried by the left corner right now. But I'm interested to see because his mid-range jumper has been flawless this year, 48% from the mid range. John, I'm interested in what you want me to apologize about. I seen it. Let me start by saying this. Franz has been excellent in Banchero's absence. He's been absolutely fuego. He's exactly what they've been needing. He's upped his scoring. He's upped his playmaking. He's done everything for this team to get it to him. I mean, he's freaking been a plus on both ends of the floor, you know? So I think what they needed him to do, he's been doing that, and it's going to be intriguing to see how he looks next, how this version of him looks next to Banchero. But I think, like, you have to give him credit. Like, he's solidified himself as a legit all-star this year, you know, especially in the East with the way he's been hooping, the way he's been able to get to the rim, you know, the way he's just upped the aggression on scoring. And Orlando, when they get Banchero back, this could be a dynamic duo that they've been waiting for. You know, we've been waiting for this type of Franz to wake up. And it could be a blessing in disguise, Banchero's injury, where they needed him to get injured for Franz to wake up. Now it's just to see how these two, you know, kind of play together. But, John, what do you need me to apologize about? I'm curious.
You said he was a bad shooter.
He's shooting 33%.
35.
No, I'm looking at it right now. It's 33%. 33%.
He did that much today? He was at 35.4 earlier today.
33.6. According to Shot
Creator today.
Well,
yeah.
On the year, Franz is shooting 35%, and that's per Basketball Reference from 3. Shooting 85% at the foul line. And these last 16 games without Paolo in the lineup, dating back to their loss versus the Bulls, he is shooting 34% on 6 3-point attempts a game. Good volume, not too many attempts. And while the Magic's defense is what's leading them to wins, it is Franz holding together an offense with very little talent around him on that end, very little shot creation. I would say infinitesimal shot creation outside Franz Wagner. And with the burden of running an offense on Franz Wagner's shoulders, not only have the Magic won 11 in the last 12 games, he's averaging 25 points, 6.5 assists, just 2 turnovers a game, 2.5 stocks, 2 steals, defending at career best, while shooting 47% from the field, and currently 54% on the year on twos. This is a capable to above average shooter for his position, Riv.
Above average is crazy.
Like to admit it or not, because he is a 6'10" wing. And at 6'10",
but he's a wing.
He has done this year, he is 6'10" nonetheless. And this is someone who has shot 36%. This is someone who has shot above 37% catch and shoot looks for multiple seasons. His rookie and his sophomore year. Yes, you can check the data. I will show you the data, matter of fact. This is someone who at 6'10" has always been a really good driver, an above average finisher, but this year we're seeing a little bit more. You can say special, I don't disagree. We're seeing him more than ever before use that size to create mismatches, finding steals, and attacking smalls out the post, kind of using that size more to his advantage. We're also seeing, too, in the mid-range area, I cannot speak, so I'll try that again. Raise his release point on his mid-range shots to get them off more efficiently and quickly. Now, per clean the glass, it's only at 40%. Maybe the efficiency and the percentages aren't fully backing what the eye test is showing me. But Franz looks like a more complete, well-rounded scorer and someone who's not limited in that in-between space from 18 to 11 feet. He has a floater. He has that package of deceleration to get downhill to the paint and gather himself. But the mid-range scoring is something which is a lot more comfortable. And I think those two things have propelled him into being just a more well-rounded player. And when we talk about Franz, Game 7 last year was one of the worst performances I've seen, and we can acknowledge there have been moments with Paul in the lineup where he has not exceeded or met that expectation that was set first 2 years. But right now, he is more than exceeding it because he is a clear all-star. And honestly, in that starting spot in the Eastern Conference, I'm between him and Karl Towns. And that is a testament to just how well he is playing in the absence of Paolo Banchero.
Wouldn't Cat start at the 5?
Yeah, at the 5 technically.
And then Giannis and Tatum would be in. Brother, he's not going to get a start.
Tatum at the 3, Giannis and Cat.
Yeah, it's okay.
He's not beating the New York media either.
Yeah, it's okay. There's nothing wrong with it too. He'll get on the team.
Orlando versus New York media, it's not really going to help his case here. But in my opinion, I think him and Cat are the two guys who are fighting for that 5th starting spot. And honestly, it's wide open. After Tatum and Giannis, you can see Donovan Mitchell, you can see LaMelo, Dame. There's really not that certainty yet. And with the type of way that he's been playing, I think he can get some discussions to be an all-star game starter.
What is the biggest band in China or Korea right now?
I don't know.
I have no idea.
if we're going to get him in the starting lineup instead of Cat, we need the Andrew Wiggins situation all over again. Because
Yeah.
that's what happened with Wiggins. Like a Twitter shout out made him the starter.
That was a movie. That was a fucking movie that year, man. I can't believe he got it because of that.
What band was it? Who, like
I
some
don't-
famous artist or band from Asia was the
Yeah,
one
it
that
was,
like,
it was a big fan base because they got him in, bro. Like
They got him in.
Like it was crazy.
yeah, that's what Franz Wagner needs to get into that conversation. Is John looking that up right now? No.
Maybe.
Okay. please, you're doing good work if you do that. But
Doing the Lord's work over here. Manufacturing.
Lord's work.
39% of China's GDP.
Okay.
So
Let's roll with that.
there's not a whole lot of
we got
glory
to
though
get
in that industry.
all the biggest international bands voting for Franz Wagner. But
Please.
I will say a couple things. Number one, that 2021 draft has so much parity right now. It's actually crazy because Franz Wagner, you can make a case he's playing the best in that class right now, but you can make that case for like 3 or 4 guys like Mobley or, Barnes earlier or Cade, like all those guys.
Cade's
But
an all-star.
I think the question I have, I agree. I think the question I have for the Orlando Magic situation, because Franz is so good with the ball in his hands, because Paolo is so good with the ball in his hands, how will they mesh that back together? Because Franz Wagner is very self-realized off the ball. Like his step back three is nasty, and I
He
think that
goes
really
wide
helps.
round.
Shooting. So they're gonna have to play off of each other again. And how does that look? Does this become like the young Tatum, young Brown thing where everybody's like, they're better playing away from each other? They can't win together. Are we going to have those conversations with these two? Because the best version of both of these two is with that really high usage.
Mm-hmm. Riv, any thoughts?
Oh, sorry. My
Check
dad
the
was-
Eagles score. They won. Don't
No,
worry.
we won. My dad was calling me. No, we won. Belt to fucking ass, John. That was for you guys.
Yeah.
Belt to ass.
See you soon.
Yeah. Well, no, you don't want to see us.
Fellow 10 and 2
yeah,
teams.
buddy.
Fellow 10 and 2 teams.
Yeah, I think
Handshake that.
no, you're right, Wilder. That 2021 class, they all have their moments. I think Mobley and Wagner this year have been the most consistent. Cade probably, well, and Sengun, of course, and then Cade is probably sitting at. It's just they're all in weird ass situations. Not weird, but just completely different than one another. I think we can all agree though. Jalen Green is clearly the biggest disappointment out of all.
He's the polar bear. He
Yeah,
is
it's
not
like-
even in Arlington, Texas. He's in Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like, we see Detroit leading by Cade. They look more competitive. Shout out to them. We see Sengun leading the charge, Mobley doing his thing, Wagner doing his thing, and then it's Jalen Green just dangling like, "Hey guys,
Oh, shit.
yeah, I'm trying, but I just can't." Like, it's truly crazy. But yeah, Franz is doing his thing. I'm not gonna sit here and act like he's not. He's doing his thing. He's up to listen. The defense, of course, is gonna carry Orlando. I don't think they'll get to that level of a top 10, top 12 offense just yet, a consistent one. I think that their 3-point shot still very, 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 very in the mud.
Work
But-
to be made.
Yeah, but I think defensively, as long as you're great and you have that one guy that can just get down and get grind and do the dirty work, that's Franz right now until Paulo comes back, and he's been performing at a high level.
The Magic are 29th in three-point shooting at 31.9%. I think Philadelphia is the only team that's worse, but I'm not even quite sure. I mean, you add in Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, who is shooting below 30% from three-point land. Wendell Carter Jr., his stretch big potential hasn't been great in the 8 games he's played. Anthony Black, sub 30. Their best shooter after Paolo Banchero is, by a percentage, Jet Howard or Tristan Da Silva, who are de facto rookie. So there is no floor spacing here. You have Paolo Banchero, an all-NBA player, exiting the lineup for over a month, and the Magic are 14-7. When Paolo exited the lineup, I said the Magic just need to stay 4 games of 500. If you're 4 games below, just kind of just treading water a little bit. Maybe you're drowning slightly, but just don't fall 8, 9, 10 games. They're seeing in Philadelphia. And right now they are a top 4 seed in the Eastern Conference. So I think Franz doesn't get enough credit for just how much he's uplifted this offense. Jalen Suggs, 32% from 3 after last year, taking a big step forward. So you look at this Orlando offense, there's nothing beyond him. And I actually want to say one more thing before we wrap up because we're 10 minutes over here. It really is amazing how easily players fall off after leaving Nikola Jokic's side.
Ooh.
You look at Will Barton, who was averaging 15 points on league average efficiency. The Nuggets traded him to the Wizards. He was out of the NBA a year later. On the flip side, they had Bruce Brown, career year at Denver, vital six man on a contender. He leaves Denver and he quickly kind of disappears into the abyss. You then look at Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. His three-point shooting falls off over 5% the moment that he leaves, over 7%. Nikola Jokic is the easiest superstar to play with, and I don't understand how more players in the NBA look at that and say, I need to rush to play with him, because so often he gets guys paid, and the moment they get those bags, they immediately fall off a cliff after they leave his side. And yet still, the Nuggets' biggest free agency addition the last 2 years has been Dario Saric. Riff, you were right. He is not good anymore.
I tried to tell you this,
My
bro.
Italian stallion is no longer good anymore. I take it back. I apologize, Russell Westbrook. That was very disrespectful. Russell Westbrook is our biggest free agent signing, but that's someone Nikola Jokic had to go out and vie for him to just sign with Denver when he didn't have much of a market. So it is truly mind-boggling to understand the fact that no one wants to play in Denver, because it is a great way to make a lot of money and win a boatload of games.
Shout out to Russell Westbrook, by the way. He's our number one TikTok so far. So shout out to Russell Westbrook. And he's been cooking ever since.
He's very well, Riv. He's fallen. I'm not
No,
happy.
We jinxed him as fuck.
Yeah, that's what I needed. I needed that.
He needed the fuel. We needed to light that fuel in his belly, and now he's killing. He still hasn't
Steph Curry as a shooter.
Yeah, he still hasn't had 30 yet. So we're holding off, because I was on Twitter and some guy was like not coming back until Westbrook had 30. And I tweeted, brother, you're never coming back. And it banged. And there was one night where he was sitting at 29 points. It was like 6 minutes into the game. And I'm like, fuck. But he didn't get it. I was like, because I was going to get ratioed so bad. So I can't have that, man. We can't have that. I don't know if he's had 30 cents, but I haven't heard about it. So I think I'm good.
I don't want to look back at one of the first 2 episodes, because I feel like we've had so many bad takes already so far this year.
That's great. That's what we need. I don't think we've had too many asinine takes. What's the worst take we've had?
I still think my stance on Victor was pretty bad.
I don't know what you're thinking.
Well, I totally understand what I was thinking, and honestly, I think that logic was impeccable. But when building on that, here's the thing: if Victor Wembanyama is shooting 40% from three, shoot as many threes as you want. But I mean, the questions for Victor still stand by. But if the start of the year, I think he's a better shooter than he started out, and he's probably a better shooter than every year of his life, because he's never been an efficient shooter. So there's some things there, but Victor's cooking, man. So
you're just setting yourself up there. That's all it was. The logic didn't make sense. You're just setting yourself up to be.
My point wasn't that my Victor's stock was dropping or rising. I was always in on Victor. Long term, I thought he was going to be the best player in the league, and I still stand by that. I was just like, hey, man, year 2 is usually the year that's kind of the transition year. Look at, obviously, he's a better prospect than these guys, but look at a guy like Scotty Barnes and other guys who it takes year 3 until they really boom. Ja Morant, same thing. So I was kind of thinking Victor maybe has an all-star caliber year, then he breaks into superstardom the year after. He's not a superstar yet, but he might be approaching that way this year. We'll see. So I'll still stand by it. And plus, ever since, unfortunately, Chet's out for 10 weeks and Evan Mobley is just very steady. He's never going to boom, just steady. So, that was pretty bad. What's another one? I don't know. That's the bad one so far. I'm sure there's plenty, especially from John. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I've had a few. Russell Westbrook's last 10 games, 14-7, 47% on 4 3-point attempts. If that sustains, I'll see you in Denver when we have a championship parade in June.
Yeah, that's still running through Minneapolis, buddy. I'm just kidding. No, it's not.
I get the 500 first, and we'll talk after.
I just need Dante to shoot 35% from 3, then my life will be saved, man.
His word's gone, unfortunately.
He can't throw a ball in an ocean right now, man. It's bad. It's bad. But he started cooking the other day. He banked a 3 on the shot clock. Maybe that builds something up. Julius Randle just doesn't – I've never seen – Julius Randle, when he doesn't get things going his way, man, just looks like
he looks like me.
Teenage girl when you buy her the wrong car. That's what Julius Randle looks like.
Low key. That's a good encapsulation.
So that's what he looks like when he doesn't get the ball. So I'm like, dude, let's Plus, his ball watching is freaking atrocious.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
awful to watch.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Julius Randle rant. 1-year contract. We'll see what happens.
Watching Justin Tucker fall.
John,
he's
you
having a
want-
migraine.
Justin Tucker fall off makes me appreciate LeBron James even more. Andrew Velez.
cooked.
I'm with that. I'm with that. Plus, Vikings saved my life today. That comeback was special. So that's all I'm going to say. Is there anything else we want to do before we close off the show?
Let's close it, man.
All right. Well, that does it for episode 6 of Objectively Biased. Thank you guys so much for watching. We weren't here last week, but I promise we'll be here consistent week in, week out, week in, week out. I can't talk either.
Content came either way.
Yep, it came either way. So thank you guys so much, and we'll see you next week.